the things that brought you guys here today. You want to talk about taxes. So that evaluation phase is important because people screw up businesses in a lot of ways. One way they can screw up businesses is they cannot be structured correctly. And so you're going to see topics up here that talk about things like that. You know, what are the proper entity structures? Another way they can do this, they cannot do the record keeping properly. So once we've evaluated who they are, we help them put systems in place, make sure that they're tracking things properly, they're accumulating all their expenses, which leads to paying the least amount of taxes you can pay. And then you get into the other questions from the standpoint of, okay, now I know where I've been. I know what my income is that's coming in, what my commissions are, what my expenses have been. Now what? And that's where most CPA firms stop, because they stop at that point. We like to think everybody thinks they're different, right? You guys are the best realtors in Louisville. Just admit it.
Yeah.
You know, but every group I talk to seems to say that. But regardless, the point is you all are right about it. So we feel like we're the best CPAs for small businesses in the city as well, because the next step we take is that we spend a lot of time with our clients, and we're doing this right now. It's a very hot time for this, talking about what's going on for the rest of the year. What can we do to change those numbers based on the stuff that you've accumulated, the income, the expenses? What can we do to fix that? What can we do to improve that? You know, does it make sense for you to buy a car? Does it make sense for you to open a retirement account? You know, lots of different things that you can do. Do we need to change your business structure because your income has grown? And so there are a lot of answers to those types of questions. And then it's kind of like the old infamous shampoo analogy everybody uses, right? Wash, rinse, and repeat. And we come back to evaluation, making sure systems are good, and continuing to monitor those things and continuing planning on an ongoing basis. So that's 2 minutes about us and why we feel like we do this a little bit differently. Education is the main thing that we do with every one of our clients and with any group that we get the opportunity to be in front of. And the intention is we'd rather educate you guys about how to take care of these things, because otherwise we have to come live with you. That definitely is a COVID violation, I'm sure. And we're kind of a nuisance if we're there in your way all the time. So it's much better for us to teach you guys about some of these things so that we can partner well with the people that we're able to come across and help. So enough sales pitch, that's who we are. Let's jump into the agenda and talk about these things. And then the most important part, let's get a chance to talk about what you guys want to talk about from the standpoint of questions. So I'll probably jump around on this agenda a little bit. I might start with 2020 year-end tax planning and come back to tax law changes for 2021, because you guys are going to help me with that section. Because you're gonna get your crystal balls out and you're gonna tell me what's gonna happen with a few things going forward, and then I'll be able to answer your questions. But on the tax planning for the year end, I got off the phone before I jumped in the car to drive over here this morning with a young man who is not part of your all's group, but he's just gone into real estate about 2 months ago. Sound familiar? And his first question is, what do I need to do? So we started talking about entity structures. The general advice is that every realtor, standalone or even in a group, ought to have an LLC. And the reason for that is multiple. People will tell business owners to go into an LLC either because they're trying to limit liability, because an LLC is like a corporation. If you have an LLC, it's like having another person at this table. The LLC is now an entity as well. So if somebody sues the business, they're suing the LLC, they're not suing you personally. That sounds really good, right? But for people who are licensed, like realtors, accountants, physicians, attorneys, we only get a limited amount of protection from that, because as professionals, we're required to individually be responsible to our clients. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if there's some other violation or something that comes up, that the LLC wouldn't be successful in providing some legal protection at that point. So that's one reason why people form LLCs. But the other reason why you form them, and it's relevant to all you guys, is I suspect you hope to make money doing this, right? That's why you're here. And as you begin to make more money, an LLC can dramatically help you create a tax structure where you pay a lot less taxes. And it's all very much relevant to how much money you're making. So when we talk about money you're making, we're talking about what's left over after your expenses. So if you bring in $60,000 worth of commissions in a year, and you have expenses of $15,000, we're talking about the $45,000 that's left. That's what you pay taxes on. You know that. You've been at this for a while. It's what's left over, right? And that's also what drives all the various kinds of taxes that you pay. When you're an individual realtor without an LLC, you pay the highest level of taxes that there are in the tax code in this country. You pay income taxes to the federal government, to the state government, to the city government for any activity here in Jefferson County. You also pay Social Security taxes. You pay Medicare taxes. You've got all these layers of taxes. If you make enough, there's even additional layers that an individual pays. But there are other types of tax structures that are corporate in nature that do not pay all of those tax layers. The extra tax layers that I alluded to, they're actually Obamacare taxes. Those are not paid by corporations. Social Security taxes are not paid by corporations. Medicare is not paid by corporations. And so there are a number of layers of taxes that we can peel off just by making your business taxed separately from you. And LLCs give you the option, it's not a mandatory thing, they give you the option to go in either direction with that. So for new realtors, like most of you guys, obviously you're our exception today, you're exceptional today. But for new realtors, we recommend using an LLC for every new realtor, because what that allows them to do is that they have the option. An LLC doesn't have any tax status on its own. It gets to decide whether it's going to be taxed as an individual or as a corporation. And as time goes on, you get to make that choice. So here's the scenario in a nutshell. It's 2020 and there's what, 5 weeks left, 6 weeks left of the year? And you guys are brand new, and I hope you've already closed 28 deals, but the odds are pretty good that you haven't this year, being brand new for most of you. So because of that, an LLC put in place right now would only benefit whatever closings you have between now and the end of December for 2020. So doing that kind of structure right now probably doesn't make sense, because there are some costs of forming an LLC, and there's some cost of this corporate type of structure over here. So as you might imagine, the benefits go up as you make more money. Taxes are progressive. Basically, the more you make, the more you pay. So as you make more money, the benefits of not paying some of those taxes in the corporate column go up. But the cost of having a LLC that's taxed as a corporation are pretty flat. They're $1,500, $2,000, somewhere in that ballpark additional. Could even be $2,500, depending upon the complexity of who owns it and these types of pieces. And so it wouldn't make sense to jump into that kind of structure unless you knew the savings were going to be there, right? So what we find out is that this increase in benefit crosses over that cost line, and it's somewhere around $20,000, $25,000 after profits. I mean, after expenses. Profits after expenses is what I should have said. So the point is, first year, again, hope that happens, and it might, just depends. The gentleman I was talking with, he'll remain nameless, but he's got 3 closings on the board. Started two months ago. He's already got 3 closings on the board. A couple of them are those kind of, you almost work harder than the money, $80,000 properties and things where you don't make much. But he's got ones at $300,000 properties. So he's gonna pop a nice little piece on that. And he's going to end up with some money coming in this year. But even for him, with all the front end monies that you lay out getting into real estate, and with just your ordinary expenses, which we'll talk about more in a moment, that you're going to have on an ongoing basis, the answer for him is likely that LLC will be no benefit whatsoever. You'll probably have $15,000 or $16,000 worth of commissions by the end of the year, and his expenses will erode that away. Well, that's nowhere near 25,000-ish after expenses. So the short answer is, for him, my recommendation was, he provided a great case study today. My recommendation was, let's wait and form your LLC at the end of the year. There's a little bit of cost that he can not incur by waiting a few more weeks to do that. And so he'll have it in place for all of 2021. My guess is all you guys are pursuing this as a full-time adventure, and you're certainly going to want to have LLCs in place by the beginning of 2021. Or maybe sooner, if you have 3 or 4 closings on the board that are going to cause you to make some money this year, that would be a little unusual, but not unheard of in this crazy marketplace. If you happen to get the listings, you know, or happen to have the buyers, you can make money pretty quickly these days. It's amazing to me how quickly properties turn. So I mentioned that from the standpoint of LLCs are excellent. The other reason that they're excellent is they have no tax status of their own. So I'm drawing these two columns with my hands here, right? Tax as an individual, higher tax rates. Tax as a corporation, lower tax rates, but some additional costs that go along with just maintaining the corporation and doing what you have to do. So you wouldn't jump over here automatically. Well, the question is, how do I know what's going to happen coming up? And you don't. And you don't. So the secret is you can form an LLC. We don't tell the government whether you want to be in column A or column B. Instead, we wait until the end of the year, and then we declare retroactively that we want to be in column A or column B when we have knowledge of what your real numbers are. So it's an incredibly flexible tax tool. If you don't have an LLC already, I would encourage you to get one. It will just give you that benefit of being able to save the taxes. Because if you get to October next year and you say, oh my gosh, I'm having a great year. At that point, there's nothing you can do with January through October. If you form an LLC at that point, those things have already, that's all history at that point. You can't rope it back in. But if you form the LLC now or at the beginning of the year, and whatever happens then throughout the year can be pulled under that LLC umbrella and off you go. What's it involved to form an LLC? There are some legal filings that take place with regard to Secretary of State and several of the governmental agencies. There's also some other compliance types of things you have to step through. We make that really turnkey. Some people try to do it themselves, and it's not impossible to do that. We've had clients that have done that successfully. Most people don't want to hassle with it. Their time is worth more than the fees that it costs to do it. You certainly can do it for less than $500 all in. By the time you pay people like us to do that, and the fees that have to be paid to various agencies to set up these accounts. So the long and short of it is, if you budgeted, you know, your bill will not be $500 total for all those little machines, and it can be done turnkey to put that in place for you. So it's not a very expensive thing to do. Not free, but not very expensive to have that great planning tool going forward. As far as maintaining the LLC, again, the tax structure is different than just maintaining the LLC. Suppose that you don't have a great year next year. Basically, you end up making 20 grand at the end of the year after expenses. Well, we would keep you in column A. There's no reason to incur that extra $1,500 or $2,000 worth of expenses that's necessary to do all the tax filings and other fees and payroll compliance and everything that goes along with being in column B. So you just continue to be over here. If you stayed over here, and I doubt any of you guys will, you're going to be more successful than that. But if you stay over here, then the bottom line is it costs you about $200 a year to maintain that LLC.
200.
About $200. There's $175 minimum tax that every LLC in Kentucky has to pay. And there's another fee that has to be paid to the Secretary of State to keep your records updated. So if you stay in this column, very little cost. We don't want you to stay in this column. We want you over here making money. But if that were to happen, the point is that's your risk of getting an LLC in place when maybe you didn't really end up needing one. It costs you $500-ish to form it with all the all-in fees and a couple $100 over here to take care of it. I know when we talked to Harry Borders last year, Harry even said, shoot, I'll do those for you guys for free.
Right.
And so he may be willing to form your LLC for you without you incurring that $500 worth of cost. There'll still be some of it because of the fees that the agencies charge, but you might be able to get him to do that if he's still that friendly to you guys.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
He loves us.
He offered just a few weeks ago when we mentioned that you were going to be here. He
Good,
said,
perfect.
"No,
I love Harry. Harry can do things that nobody else in the city can do.
That's great.
He really is very special as an attorney. I could make your eyes glaze over telling you about some of the crazy structures he's put in place to help people buy real estate through trusts, and they work, and I understand why they work, and I recommend them from time to time. But it's just those exotic kind of attorney things that those guys can do that not everybody can do. They just don't have the knowledge to do it. So Harry is very, very, very good. and it's become a good friend. So LLC structures, extremely important. The rest of the agenda will go quicker, guys. Again, like I said, I know I'm between you and lunch, so I don't want to, well, you know, that's the advantage of the Zoom folks. They could all be eating right now, right? So let's go on through that section. Are you accumulating the appropriate expenses for your profession? What happens is that most people understand the direct expenses. If you're paying dues, you understand that's an expense. If you've got broker expenses that you're paying to Keller Williams, yeah, you get that. If you're paying for super keys, if you're paying for signs, if you're paying for things that are direct, I don't run into a lot of folks that don't understand all of those types of things. It's the soft expenses that frequently get missed. You guys probably don't have dedicated office space here, do you? Does anybody?
Some.
Sort of, but not quite.
Yeah.
Yeah, you probably can't totally run your business here is the point. So you likely can claim office and home. And the reason I'm saying likely, if basically there was an office here and it was your dedicated office and locked door and you could do everything that you do here and don't have any administrative needs that couldn't be met here, you might not qualify. But 90% of realtors can't do that. Either the space is shared or they can only do some of their functions in their offices at their brokerage place of business, and their primary office ends up being at home. When that happens, basically a portion of all of your home expenses are deductible. We're talking about payments, we're talking about insurance, we're talking about taxes, we're talking about repairs and maintenance, we're talking about the gasoline that goes in the lawnmower. I mean, it's whatever it takes to maintain that property. You've got some portion of it that's an office, maybe it's 5 or 10 or 15% of the space, and therefore 5 or 10 or 15% of all those expenses can be deducted as home office expenses. And there's a lot of them when you really stop and think about it. Then there are some things that are 100% deductible, and then others are in between. And these are the soft expenses that get missed. But if you buy a desk for home or a chair for home for your work, that's 100% deductible. If you're buying equipment, if you're buying computers or iPads or whatever it is that connects you to the world these days, those are all going to be 100% deductible. If you are buying a phone or your cell phone service, you probably use those phones for a little other work besides business. So I always encourage everybody to use an aggressive percentage of those costs, but not 100%. It's just our way of kind of throwing a bone to Uncle Sam and saying, yeah, I do call, you know, my kids once a year and, or whatever, but 80 or 90 or 100% or 99.3% is all used for business. You know what your percentage is. It depends on your personal circumstances. But yeah, you should take a big percentage of things like your cell phone usage and buying the cell phones and all those other kind of things. Probably not so much, you know, like Minecraft, but you know, some of the other stuff, you're okay. What about internet usage at home? You guys are probably living and dying and breathing that internet all day long. Everybody knows it's only a 9 to 5 profession, right? You don't have to do anything after 5 o'clock or on the weekends, but yeah. Maybe it's a 5 to 9 profession. Anyway, but the point is, you're burning up that internet. That's how you guys connect to your clients, your customers. It's how you connect here. It's how you connect to listing services, everything else that's out there in the world. You ought to be taking a big chunk of that. And then you need to be creative. What else do you use that helps you in your business? And we haven't talked about cars yet, and that's a big deal. You see mileage up there. Have you guys heard about an app called Mile IQ? Howie knows it. Yeah, that is an amazing app because Howie is like me. He's not a great record keeper. I'm picking on you.
I completely agree with you.
But we've known each other for a long time.
Yeah.
But the reality is, Mile IQ, every time you get in the car, it tracks that you're in the car.
Oh, it automatically does?
Automatically tracks it.
Oh,
That's nice.
It costs $60 a year, guys.
Oh.
It costs $60 a year, and it will save you $6,000 worth of aggravation.
That's what it is at Fox.
It really will.
Uh-huh.
When you do this, it brings up every one of those trips on the screen, tells you where you started, tells you where you ended, tells you how many miles it was, and your job is you swipe right if it's personal and left if it's business. I forget which way it is. I know when I have my phone in front of me. But basically, all you do is swipe right or left. Business one way, personal the other way. It sends you a report at the end of the month, sends you a report at the end of the year, you're done.
Thank you. That was.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. It's efficient.
Oh, God, yes.
First price of
Hold a
admission,
second.
but it is an amazing tool.
Mhm.
Another one that I'll mention in that same breath is Expensify. Now, some people love Expensify, some people are kind of a little grumpy about it, but basically what you do with Expensify, these are both Microsoft apps, by the way. They work, there's an Apple version of them, but I mean, they were developed by Microsoft. What Expensify does is you take a picture of anything that's business related that you need to capture the receipt. And it does the rest.
Wow.
Is it expensive five or
It-
five?
EXPENSIFY.
F1.
Yeah,
How much does that one cost?
I don't know.
Okay, I'll look.
I don't know. We have business cards in the office, so I don't have to ever do that. But for people that are basically spending money, you got a credit card, right? You're spending money sometimes on business, sometimes personal. You sometimes you spend cash. All you gotta do is snap a picture, open the app, snap a picture of that,
Of the
it's
receipt?
captured. Yes,
Okay. Oh,
and it classifies them. It says, oh, that's a restaurant, and
okay.
it puts it in meals. Oh, that's whatever, and it classifies all these things, and there are very few that it doesn't classify correctly. Again, even if it costs a little bit, it'd be well worth the cost.
It says $5 a month.
Yeah, so it's,
Oh.
they're consistent, aren't they?
Yep.
Yeah, but again, you might want to look at that if that's the world you live in. I deal with some realtors. I've got a guy named Trevor out of Bowling Green. He's a realtor. Trevor makes a lot of money. I mean, he's a six-figure plus guy every year. I'm like, Trevor, let's talk about your mileage. He said, I don't have any really. I said, you're a realtor. Of course you have mileage. He said, no, I do it pretty much all online.
Oh, wow.
I said, you are a weird duck, Trevor. Nobody does that, right? You know, and what do you do about showings? He said, well, I give them a code. They're able to go see the house. I mean,
Not here.
no, not going to happen in Louisville. And Bowling Green's a little different marketplace. It mirrors us in a lot of ways, but they're growing down there. A lot of crazy going on down in that area. But he's a weird duck. You guys are probably in your cars a lot. And because of that, things like Expensify matter because it's so easy to have a receipt and just not capture it. But if you could, your phone's with you, what? You just sleep with it, take a shower with it, all the other stuff, you know? Pretty easy to grab a picture or whatever that is, and boom, there it is.
If nothing else, just to keep the loads of paper, because I've got every receipt of every real estate, anything that's dealing with my business. And this would be great, because I
Yeah,
got paper, I have paper out the wazoo.
Yeah, and you know, to that end, you're providing great lessons better than I can to these guys, because yeah, you do have to keep all that stuff. If you don't keep it, and somebody asks for it, I have 2 IRS audits going on today. First 2 we've seen in a long time. These guys are habitual offenders. That's why they got audited. They run businesses. They're not in real estate. They will not keep records. Well, guess what the IRS auditors do? Well, no. There's no proof.
Right.
Yeah, I'm sure you drove your car, but you have no proof. Proof matters tremendously if you ever end up in front of those guys. Yes, ma'am.
If you're just coming from home to the office, that would count towards the business, right?
It depends.
Okay.
If your primary office is at home,
Uh-huh.
then yes, your trip here is a business trip.
Okay.
If your primary office is here, then it's commuting. It's no different than,
Okay,
did you have work before you were a realtor? Did you work somewhere?
I did, but it wasn't anything like this.
Right, so it was a job, right?
Right, yeah.
You couldn't deduct that mileage. It was just going back and forth to work. So it depends on where your primary center of work is. For most realtors these days, and you guys are probably a little different, Amy, than a lot of the groups I talked with. The ability to have an office on site is not common these days. It's just not that much of it. For one thing, we don't need them, right? I mean, we can work out of our, again, it's wherever the phone is pretty much. And so most brokerage groups have moved away from that. You all probably have a little more of that than some do. But that being said, it's where your primary work takes place. How much do you work here? Average hours a week.
It depends. I mean, some days I'm here all day, 5, 6 hours. Some days I'm just home, working from home.
Yeah, how many hours do you work at home?
About the same, but
So your case may be kind of equal. I would still encourage you to think of your home office as your primary office.
Okay,
Because my guess is that's where your financial records are, it's where a lot of stuff is. When you're here, you probably have limited numbers of things you do.
here.
And there are other things that you
I mean,
do only at
here,
home.
being a part of a team, we do have a designated office with
Mhm.
a locked door. But again, we kind of share.
Right. Think of it like having a mini storage unit. I know that's a bad analogy, but you know, there's important stuff in a mini storage unit, but it's not something you live in every day.
Yeah,
And you don't do everything that you do in your house in the mini storage unit. That may be a bad analogy, but it's kind of the way the office thing works too. You know, where do you perform most of your activity? Where do you communicate with most of your clients? Where do you, the answer is the car probably. But the point is, it's not normally in the brokerage office.
That's right.
You
Yeah,
know,
I mean,
The things that
during
make
this
you money.
COVID, it's mostly from home. Right?
That's what I would think as well. And that's why we take that position with most of the realtors we work with.
Mhm.
And it opens the door for a lot more expenses. We're not as dumb as we look. I mean, we're gonna do that, right?
Oh, yeah.
We're gonna take what we can take.
And I got a really bad office supply habit.
Uh-huh.
So
It is.
I got a closet full of any office supplies that anybody would ever need. People give them to me for Christmas because I like office supplies.
Uh-huh.
So
You sound like my wife.
but just think of it. I can go to Office Depot and lose my mind. And it's a write-off. So I'm like happy.
Yeah.
Your
Yeah.
printer, your
Yeah.
ink, you know how expensive ink is. Think about it.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
all, write it all.
That stuff definitely, all those kind of things that are direct like that can be written off even if you couldn't claim a home office.
Mhm.
The home office allows you to do the percentages of your home expenses that are shared.
Okay.
So my insurance that protects my entire house, but 10% of my space is used for office, therefore I take 10% of my insurance.
So, and I'm sure that applies to you even if you're living in an apartment and not a.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, portion of your rent, portion of your insurance, portion of your utility bills.
Mhm.
Yeah, you know, I always make really bad drawings and illustrate this, but you know, if you got 6 rooms and one of them's your office, and maybe it's 15% or whatever that math works out to be. So that's kind of how you look at it. So that's good. See, also if you can claim an office and home, my wife is an Office Depot addict as well, although they're closing and she's grieving. So,
Yes.
you know, it's killing her. It's killing her. She likes it better than Staples. But, you know, also you can do the same thing at Lowe's, right, guys?
Yeah.
I mean, you know, we could go to Lowe's and just perpetuate the stereotype there a little bit.
And if you like, I'm getting ready to revamp my office. So
All of that cost
all of that cost
will
is
be
going to be.
deductible, absolutely. The furnishings you put in there, the stuff you hang on the wall.
I was wondering about that.
You know what our buddy Daryl did?
Yes, he bought all his sports memorabilia.
And he decorated his office with it and spent a fortune on it. He's
So
in
what-
sports. so
Whatever
it
your
makes sense.
favorite collectible is, whatever makes you happy in your office, you buy as office decoration, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Wow, is there a max?
You don't get it.
Well, I mean, you know, the question would
I got
be.
a closet, a large closet
That makes you happy.
with every color paper, every kind of weight.
If it gets extensive, the question might be raised of whether or not it was business necessary. But our buddy Daryl that we're talking about actually writes for a sports column paper, piece of cake.
Yeah.
You know, it just is. I mean, these are all, you can sit down and talk to him, he'll tell you stories about every one of them. And that's what he does for a living, is tell those stories in print, electronically and every other way. No brainer. But you guys can do a lot of that kind of stuff too. Even if it were framed photos of the houses you sell. I know I'm being silly, but I mean, the point is, whatever it is, you could do decor, and nobody says that you have to have a barren room with no floor, no rugs and nothing on the walls. You're allowed to decorate your offices.
You
Along
want a
those lines.
cushion for your chair, for your, a cushion for your car, for your back, because you're gonna be in your car a lot. That heats up and massages your back as you're driving.
Wow, that's a good idea.
Why not just get the personal masseuse? That would cost more, it'd be more deduction.
No,
So-
now that you say that, hold up. No, seriously, because one of my past clients is a masseuse.
There you go.
Can I write him off?
Well, you're gonna have to prove that you need it for business, but yeah, probably.
Thank you.
So a lot of our stuff's done on Zoom now. The
Right.
Zoom backdrop matters.
Yes.
Can I, if I wanted to put in built-ins, like built-in bookcases
Sure.
that I can actually work at?
But it's gonna be in your office, Hallie, it's gonna be deductible.
Right.
I mean, it's just that simple, really.
Okay.
It's gonna be in your office, it's gonna be deductible.
Okay.
Has a masseuse come to my office? and
There you
bring it
go.
down?
Maybe you can build in the masseuse table
Yeah.
in your office,
There you go.
so the cost of the table. I'm just thinking.
Too many office supplies, I don't have room.
So, I'm curious about depreciation.
Uh-huh.
And I'm not sure if it's a suppressed memory because I didn't have previous.
No, but it's a good question.
And so it could have been on my investment property or it could have been real estate or maybe both. Can
Mm-hmm.
you talk a little bit about that as we buy things for our office?
Yeah, so basically right now, the reason I'm not talking about that is because service businesses don't buy super expensive things. And the way depreciation works right now, there's $500,000 per year that can be just deducted without having to be depreciated.
Okay.
You guys aren't gonna spend that kind of money. Manufacturers, maybe.
Okay.
I've got a manufacturing client buying a $400,000 piece of equipment this fall. But most service businesses just don't spend that kind of money on anything. So, the short answer is yes, depreciation matters. The topic I've skipped over for 2021, once you guys give me the crystal ball answers in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about why that question may become relevant again.
Okay.
But it's not relevant yet. So today, it doesn't matter whatever you spend, you just deduct 100%. No worries. Retirement planning. Most of you guys are young realtors, so this may be more appropriate for you than it is for them. And I'm not talking about age, I'm talking about longevity. So, and we talk about age too if you want. I'm there with, ahead of you.
I'm a baby.
But the bottom line is retirement plans are a great way to shelter money aside that you don't have to pay taxes on. And it's very individualistic. And the reason it's individualistic is it has to fit into overall economic planning. So for example, I'll meet with one family, the mom and dad are in their 50s, the kids are out of the house. They're sitting here going, yeah, we want to load up on everything we can in retirement. Well, there's the easy answers for them. We just push the accelerator all the way to the ground and go after plans that will allow them to put thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars into retirement plans every year. And I tell every family or individual I deal with, if you can tell me what you would like to do, hey, I'd like to put $20,000 in, and I can find a plan that'll let you put $20,000 away per year. And there's different plans if the answer is $5,000 or $2,000. There's different plans for all those different levels. So where that planning needs to start is with overall financial planning, not from the standpoint of here's the answer, do this, but it's more about making that fit into the overall planning. That being said, every dollar you put in a retirement plan, Uncle Sam gives you a deduction for it. Where else could you take a dollar from your right pocket and put it in your left pocket and get a tax deduction for it? Not many places like that. So it's an important thing to consider. And as self-employed individuals, you have more opportunities, more types of opportunities, put more dollars away than somebody working for an employer does. So those are topics that I want to introduce, but not necessarily go crazy on. We could do another hour just on retirement plans alone. But it is something for you to think about. And if your answer is, yeah, I do have some incremental dollars. Yes, I do wish I was putting something away for retirement. We can show you how to get some tax benefit out of doing that. So tuck that away in the back of your mind. And again, your situation may be different with a couple of decades into this profession. You may have a different answer to that than these guys that have 3 weeks who are with us on Zoom, right? It's a little different situation. The business models we talked about already from the standpoint of proper entity structure, so that kind of completes that. Record keeping systems for realtors. This one's interesting. Really active realtors that spend a lot of money and have more of a traditional business type of financial structure. You mentioned being part of a group earlier, Swati. I could see a group like that needing a more sophisticated type of financial structure. Keeping records for the group on QuickBooks. You guys know Santosh and Karen, they use QuickBooks for all of the record keeping they do. They have to keep track of a lot of people, not just their stuff. And so they've done that for a long time. So I see that in a group setting. Individual realtors, it kind of depends on how much their inner geek speaks to them. Some people are really all about that kind of detail. They love to reconcile checking accounts and do all this kind of stuff. Amy's back there, ducking
And
her
I'm
head.
laughing.
Hey, we need help during tax season, Amy. If you want to come over, we can give you some extra work.
All right.
But all kidding aside, some people just, that connects with them, that resonates with them. Bad stereotype, but a pretty accurate one. People who sell things typically don't like that level of detail. So most of the realtors I run into, certainly not all, but I would say probably 70% are kind of like, oh, please tell me I don't have to do that. And you don't. Things like Expensify, things like Mile IQ, those will capture a lot of your expenses. If you're I don't want to keep records kind of realtor, use one credit card for everything that you do that's business related. You're going to have 12 statements that you have to go through to figure out your expenses. I mean, it is possible to do this without a formal system like QuickBooks or Xero or some of the others that are out there. The reality is some people would rather track everything like that. Now, you do, if you form an LLC, you do have to get a separate bank account for your LLC. And you do have to track what goes on inside of that bank account. But again, you guys don't have 50 checks a month for expenses. Most of the things you spend money on are going to be on a credit card. You don't have any recurring expenses regularly except for a few. I mean, we're talking about a handful of things, maybe a weekly Office Depot trip or something. But my point is, it is not a real intense record keeping type of profession. So it can easily be done kind of in spreadsheet mode. What I know as an accountant is it's a lot more effort to spreadsheet it than it is to keep it through a system like QuickBooks. But QuickBooks requires that regular ongoing maintenance as you go. So again, your situations are all unique. It's something that needs to be felt through individually for you. There is not a one answer fits. It just isn't. It really is all about what is going to be best in your situation. The answer is, well, I charge all my stuff on one card. I'm tracking my mileage this way. I've got these things over here. Brad, you probably have a feel for this as well. I'd say we probably 75% of our realtors do not use a formal accounting system from that standpoint. So, yeah, but here's the rub. People that use formal accounting systems tend to have more complete records and they tend to capture their deductions better. So you have to be careful.
I don't know. I mean, when I say I keep every receipt.
I believe you.
I keep
You're very
every
serious about
receipt.
this. I'm right on that page with you. When
I
Amy
love-
comes over to work part-time, we can probably put you to work too.
Here
So.
we go. Let's go, Marcia.
That Expensify though, I think.
Oh, you'll get a lot of
love
that. You will. It'll help you. Because for one thing, it creates digital copies of all that stuff.
Yes,
So now all of a sudden your file cabinets can go from 35 down to 2,
Yep.
that type of thing. But my point is you need to find answers and you need to make sure you're complete. But if I were talking to a group of people who were renovating houses, if they were investors, I tell them all day long, they need QuickBooks. They've got to capture all of that, all those little cha-chings that are coming through. They've got to control the money. They've got to be able to budget. They've got to be able to do all those kind of things. Realtors don't quite work that same way. There's not quite the same need for all of those categories as there is. It's just not as much demand. Now, again, I might sit down and meet with the three of you guys, and I might come up with totally different answers to that based on your individual circumstances. I know Hallie a little bit from some prior life that we've had together, but I don't know you guys at all. Don't know the guys on Zoom. So my point is, as I got to know those folks, recommendations might be very, very different. But my sense is, from a realty standpoint, most people would rather not. For those that would rather do something like that, electronic downloads from the bank and everything else make those systems very, very easy to keep. They're not as difficult as they used to be. You don't have to sit there and say, I paid a bill today and I wrote it to this person and this is today's date, this was the amount. You don't have to do those things anymore. It's all captured directly from the credit card companies and the banks. And these software programs end up just being kind of funnels that accumulate all that. Then you sort it out and you say, that's views and this is this and this is this and this is this and you're done. So it's not nearly the burden that it used to be, but it is work. So everybody has to figure out how they need to accumulate those things. The important thing is to have a system. What value does a CPA bring to accounting and bookkeeping? Well, we're the most valuable people you ever meet, right? But I'm not biased or prejudiced about that. All kidding aside, the bottom line is that there are multiple kinds of CPAs out there. Some of them are history writers. They're going to take whatever information you give them, and they're going to end up creating tax returns. They're going to end up creating financial reports or whatever that tells you what's already happened. We just think that's the wrong way to do this profession. We think you get a lot more benefit out of your relationship with your CPAs, whether it's us or anyone else, that you will make them help you look forward, talk about what's coming up, what can I do to help things in the rest of this year, next year. It's what we're talking about today, right? And that kind of approach means that, again, I'm laughing and teasing you guys about the education piece a little bit, but the more we educate our clients so that they are partners with us in this, they don't need to know what we know, but they need to know enough to be able to kind of walk alongside us, because that means I'll get the emails from them that says, hey, I'm dealing with this, and is this going to matter? You know, something has touched the back of their brain and said, yeah, this probably is relevant. I probably ought to check with them about that. So to that end, we have a kind of weird approach to this. And what we do, Brett works with all of our intake on our new clients. What we do is that we actually lay out plans that include the communication aspect of our relationship. So a lot of accountants are still very traditional. They're like the attorneys. You're with them for 12 and a half minutes, you get a bill for 12 and a half minutes, right? And if they work for you for 12 and a half minutes, you get a bill, whatever it is that they're doing. They're time-based. We just don't do that anymore. We put flat fees on relationships, and the reason is, if I was working with Swati and she's got a question, I don't want her to think, well, this question's going to cost me $125 because I'm going to spend X number of minutes on the phone with somebody who's going to tell me, I don't know, I need to research that. And then they're going to get an answer back. You know, we just don't do that. We set fees basically saying to you, we think the most important thing that we have is the relationship we have with you. And yeah, we're going to do your taxes and take care of all these other things and prepare tax estimates. We're doing hundreds of those right now for our clients, because those are the things that we can do to help you beneficially, but it's communicating about what do we do about it? How do we do this? How do we walk this along better for your business? That's the real benefit that you ought to get. So whoever you're working with in an accounting role, hold them accountable. No pun intended, or maybe there was pun intended. But anyway, hold them accountable for that kind of relationship with you. And if you don't have somebody, gosh, we'd love to help you with that. Brett and I spend a lot of time with people just evaluating their circumstances and what we can do and what they should do. We give a lot of advice on the front end, is that whole evaluation piece. How do we set this up? Where do we go with that? How do we structure it? Howie can tell you some interesting stories. We've had some adventures in some companies over the years, and the restructuring saved you guys thousands of dollars. It just did. But it needed to be done. If we had not done it and waited until after the fact, it would have been, well, gee, if we restructured that, you know, we would have saved the thousands of dollars. We'd save it for next year, but it's too late for last year. That's where the look ahead becomes so important. And that's why we stress it so much. So it's a big deal for us. And that's why that process that I was talking about in the beginning is what we do. We try to live that life cycle with our clients every year, make sure that we're accomplishing that. So a little bit of a sales pitch, but really what I'm telling you is how to manage that relationship with your accountants. Don't let them be solely responsible for it. Tell them what you want out of it and make it go from there. Stop that tax law changes for a minute, because we're getting close to the end of our hour together, and I want you guys to have some question time as well. So all you need to do is turn on the crystal ball and tell me who's going to win the 2 elections in Georgia in January. Right. And whether or not we really do have a new president or no president. If you'll tell me those 2 things, I can answer the questions to this.
Are there any other options?
I'll swing. But Biden's going to be the president, and the Republicans are going to retain the Senate.
I hope you're right.
Is my best guess.
I think most of us, if we had to bet substantial sums of money, would go down that path, Howie.
Right.
And I think that's likely to be true. Let me tell you why it's important. I'm a geek, right? So when these candidates start running for office, one of the first things I do is I start pulling up their tax platforms and stuff like that. Go out there and Google, just for the fun of it, Joe Biden's tax platform. I bet you most of you haven't read it, right? Anybody, have trouble sleeping at night? Got that up just so that you can read it?
You have the Cliff Notes for us.
I do, and they are not pretty. If you're self-employed if you have a small business, if you make any kind of substantial money or want to make any kind of substantial money, this tax policy will be detrimental. No question about it. And we've all heard the claims, right? If you make less than $400,000, you are not going to pay more taxes. Baloney. It isn't true. What you're going to find out when you read inside that tax policy is that they want to undo a number of things that have been done over the last few years. And some of them are going to expire anyway. There's some of these tax rates that we have right now that are scheduled to expire in 23, 24, and 25. And that'll be while Biden is in office, assuming that lightning doesn't strike the earth and Trump ends up back in office. But regardless of that, the point is taxes are going to go up over the next few years. Some of the other things that are in that tax policy is he wants to get rid of 401ks. He doesn't want us to have those. The reason he doesn't want us to have those is that he said that they are a savings vehicle for the rich. Now, I'm sorry, most companies have done away with pension plans. So virtually every working person that saves for retirement these days saves their 401k, unless they're self-employed like you and I have been for a long time, Marcia, in which case it's find and scramble some way to get it done yourself, right? So the point is he wants to kill those. The vehicle he wants to put in place instead of those are something called a retirement savings credit. So where your 401k, if you really had some dollars and invested in it, might give you a $10,000, $20,000 benefit a year. Retirement savings credit is probably going to give you a $3,000 or $4,000 benefit a year. But it would be available to people who don't pay taxes as well. So anybody that could find money to save could get a retirement savings credit. Even if you're not paying taxes, it would be a refundable credit back to you. So the goal would be to take what has been available only to people who were really emphasizing savings and making money and paying taxes and push that down where it was more distributed across the population. That's fine, but it now leaves a gap of what am I going to do if I had those dollars and we're trying to invest them and go forward. It's just one example. There are several other examples in there. They are not business friendly. They just aren't. And again, it's not a political statement. It's just the reality of what the policy is. So to Howie's point, if we get at least one Republican senator in Georgia, which there have not been 2 Democratic senators down there in 70 years. So if we get at least one, the Republicans will still have control of the Senate. And we'll have this blended government, Republican Senate, Democratic House, Democratic President, and the tax law changes for 2021 will be virtually nil because the Senate will not go along with those policies. So that's what I expect to happen as well, frankly. And I'm hoping for that, because if we do get the roulette table slates the other way and we get Democrat, 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 we're going to have 2 tough years. It's going to be a lot of additional taxes. It's going to be a lot of additional stress on the economy because of those taxes. It's going to be really interesting to see if we get the normal whiplash in a couple of years politically from having a new president. Almost every new president, happened to Trump, it happened to Bush, it happened to Obama. 2 years later, the Senate and House moves back the other way. Yeah, moves the other way just because. So obviously, none of us can make our minds up. What it amounts to. None of us know what we really want. But whatever it is there, it's not that. We want something else. So that's how it goes. But I don't expect a lot of tax law changes for 2021. Right now, there is nothing scheduled. Nothing scheduled. And whether or not there will be something that will take place, again, it's been talked about widely. But if the Senate is Republican, they're not going to go along with it. It's just going to be that simple. And frankly, as soon as it looked like the Senate was going to stay Republican and that the presidency was going to go Democrat, what did the markets do?
Oh, they went wild. And then they cooled off because the Georgia runoff.
Yeah, that's it in a nutshell. It's really interesting. It's fun. I tell everybody it's fun to watch. It's not so much fun to play the game. It's really, really fun to watch. So no matter what the circumstances are and how the tax laws change, we're looking forward to walking alongside our clients and help them deal with that and get in front of it as much as they can. So that's the important thing. They all have negative tax situations that shouldn't be there. There was some lousy things done with this incentive money that was paid out during the PPP loans and all that kind of stuff. That was never intended to be taxable. right now, unless Congress acts, that money's gonna be taxable to the individuals that don't have to pay it back. It was never intended to be. But there's a loophole. The IRS is now using the loophole to say, well, yeah, you don't have to pay taxes on that money, but you can't deduct any expenses that you used the money for. Well, okay, doesn't that make it taxable? Well, yeah, really.
Right.
So the Congress never intended that. It just, our federal government's a very inefficient vehicle to do these types of things. They just don't do this well. And that's just who they are, right? Just who they are. How about some questions? I've talked a long time. You guys have been very gracious. What can I answer for you?
If I'm selling realty on one hand and buying realty on another, do I need 2 LLCs or one?
Well, let me assume you're buying to hold. Or flip.
Not a flip would be my preference.
All right, so that's a great question. And I'm glad you're asking it because it's relevant to a slice of people who are involved in real estate.
Right.
And the answers are pretty simple, really. There is such a different risk level and taxation model for buying for any kind of construction activity, whether it's flipping, whether it's remodeling, whether it's new home construction, that it always makes sense to segregate that.
Okay.
The place where it gets crazy, and it sounds like I'm complicating life just for the sake of complicating life, is that if you also buy and hold some properties as an investor, it really makes sense to have yet another LLC for those, because for a couple $100 a year maintenance costs, separating the liability out of all that matters.
Okay.
I always tell the same story when that question gets asked, Howie. A very good builder, house we had built 30 plus years ago, was building our next door neighbor's house. Sitting at home one day, house wasn't finished, we moved into ours first, and I hear kaboom, sounds like somebody set a bomb off. The framing crew was over there working away. The guys who had done the basement work, they forgot to put the support poles in the basement.
Oh,
Thing caved in, nobody got hurt seriously. It was a miracle, an absolute miracle. But it sounded like an explosion when that entire framing fell into the basement. Things happen. That was a good builder. It was somebody, some sub that looked at it and said, you know, Joe's going to do that. And Joe said, no, Charlie's going to do that. And Joe and Charlie didn't come back to the site. And rather than the framers checking on it, they just kept framing. And the thing fell in on them. You wouldn't want a liability claim on something like that.
Right.
I can see it now. The insurance company says, no, it was negligence. We're not going to pay.
Right.
You want an LLC when you're doing construction activity to stop that from getting to you, your wife, your investment properties, anything else you're doing. You want those liability separations for a couple $100 a year. You can't afford not to have them.
Right.
So it just makes sense. It doesn't mean that every one of those, remember I told you the LLC doesn't have any tax status. So for example, if you're investing in properties, rentals, we still keep those on a personal return. We don't end up with that $1,500 or $2,000 extra activity cost to pull that off over here. We don't do that because there's no benefit to doing that. We can still manage the taxes and keep them low with the rental activity on the individual return, and yet we have the LLC for liability purposes. So just because separate LLCs are the recommendation doesn't mean it's immediately going to create that much additional cost. There's ways to manage all that. But yeah, if you're gonna do some flips, protect yourself.
Yeah.
It's the right thing to do.
Okay. And each of these LLCs need different names and different applications?
Can you speak on meals, entertainment,
Yes,
and especially when we do real estate events?
yes, I can. Entertainment, right now today, under the tax law, is not deductible. This isn't. So you're talking about sending somebody to a theater, sending somebody going to a theater with them, playing golf with them. It's not deductible. It's just not. So what I told everybody when this started back in 2018 is don't do entertainment, do meals. Meals are still deductible. And they're 50% deductible today. Yeah, so if you spend $100 on a meal, you're gonna get a $50 deduction. The reason for that is that there were a lot of folks who corporately used to do a lot of alcohol in their meals at lunch. So lunch suddenly went to $200 or $300 or $400 for lunch.
Okay.
And everybody said, that's absurd. So let's just make it 50% deductible and take away some of the incentive of that. They used to call it the free martini lunch. You know, anybody ever have a martini with lunch?
No,
Yeah,
gross.
I can't imagine. But anyway,
I have no clue about any type of alcohol.
I hear you. I hear you. So, but my point is, there were a specific few that created that issue. But business meals, now they gotta be necessary. What does necessary mean? I'm your accountant. I take you to lunch. We talk about business over lunch. That's necessary. It just is. The fact that we chose to eat while we're doing it doesn't change the necessity for us to meet together. If you're taking a client out because you sold their house and made some money, perfectly okay. If you're sending them meal-wise, that's okay too. Business gifts are this whole other deal. When you're eating with somebody, it's a business meal. If you're giving me a gift certificate, it's a business gift. The gift issue is that it's supposed to be limited to $25 per gift. Suppose that you just sold a house and you want to give $100 gift to the couple that provided you the listing. I expect there's a mom and dad and 2 kids. So now you can give 4 $25 gifts.
To each person in the family.
Yeah. So there are ways to manipulate all this stuff, is the point, Marcia. This is my point about planning.
So, sorry, I didn't get it.
No. Go.
So if you do $25 gift card per person or per
Right.
whatever, so is that 100% deductible?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Now think about the cool part of that too, though. If there are kids involved,
Mhm.
make the gift card specific to them. Build a bear, right? I mean, whatever it is, do something fun for them.
Right.
Mom and dad are still appreciative. You just save them $25 the next time they're at Build a Bear. I mean, it just, you can do it kind of fun like that, and yet you've only given a $25 gift to each individual.
Got an interesting scenario. What about if you were doing, if you're doing educational type, because I know there have been, that's a meal.
Yeah, the meals are still 50%, and yes, you can do that. If you're like,
Yeah, but
what I'm doing today, if I fed you guys, I should have done that, right? But if I fed you guys, the meal part of that is only 25, only 50% deductible.
okay. But I guess I'm thinking about if I have when I have a seminar and I provide food,
Mhm.
that is that still considered 50%?
Yeah.
Okay.
Unfortunately, yes. I think it's a bad ruling, but the intention of the initial rule was so that you just didn't structure all your meals and ended up just constantly having lots and lots of write-offs, and yet it didn't stop anybody. I have clients that have tens of thousands of dollars worth of meals per year. They're just getting 50% deductions now instead of 100%. So in my mind, that should be different.
Well, it may not be, because I'm thinking, okay, if she's my lender and we're doing a seminar together,
Right.
and the cost of it is, I'm paying my 50% of it, she's paying her 50% of it. So we're splitting it a 50% again on each side,
For the
not,
meal part, yes.
okay.
Any other expenses would be 100% deductible. But again, whatever you do, don't take them to play golf, because now it's not deductible.
That's entertainment.
But it was a big issue because a lot of people had suites and things at sporting events, right?
Right.
That all these companies had sporting event suites and they were writing that off, and now they can't anymore.
Well, again, I think you have an argument for the meals,
Okay.
but yeah, the actual cost of the event,
The tickets and
the tickets and all that stuff, that used to be a huge deal.
right.
Country club dues, all that type of stuff, all considered entertainment. If you had to pay for the meal at the country club, I think you still can deduct that.
Okay.
But the entertainment went away. What we got as a trade-off was lower rates. That was one of the specific deductions that was wiped away. So what used to be a 15% bracket is now a 12% bracket. So if you save 3% on all your income, but you can't deduct your golf,
Right.
we probably came out ahead on that. What happens though is that these guys have no memory. So when they go to rewrite these tax laws, they will raise the rates back up. Do you think they'll restore entertainment and some of the other? No, of course not. That stuff's gone. It's not coming back.
Right.
So if you have a Zoom call, girls' night,
Mhm.
and you're discussing real estate, and you got a bottle of wine and you're drinking your wine, you can only deduct half of that bottle of wine, even though you're not sharing it with the people in your Zoom call.
Let me tell you something ugly about that situation. The five of us can go to lunch when we leave here, and if we all buy our own lunches, none of them are deductible, even if we continue this discussion. Now, if I buy all of your lunches, yeah, it's all deductible, including my meal.
We're going after this.
Yeah, sure, Brett. No, you drove separately, sorry. But you hear my point. There has to be a business purpose in the
Yeah.
expenditure. If the expenditure is to buy my lunch, I do that every day, no business purpose whatsoever. If the business is to buy a bottle of wine, maybe you do that every day, I don't know. But the point is, if you're not, so Howie and I are big buddies, right? So I buy lunch on Monday, he buys lunch on Tuesday, I buy lunch on Wednesday. There are ways around this.
Yeah.
There are ways around this. Hey, you know,
So in the case of the mortgage lender, would you recommend that at one time she buys everything and the next time the mortgage person buys everything?
if it's an educational event and you're inviting other participants, you're good. You're paying for other people already.
Okay, all right.
But if you're just, if you and I meet on Mondays, Tuesdays, and Wednesdays, because we just like to moan and groan about the state of athletics in, you know,
Yeah,
the city right now.
right.
And you're buying your lunch and I'm buying mine.
Nothing. But if you buy his,
I buy his on Monday, he buys mine on Tuesday. We'd have to prove business necessity,
Sure.
you know, but other than that,
you can
yeah.
write that on the receipt.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the patterns get people in trouble. The family-owned business where the family seems to have a business meeting every day for lunch. What did you do that was business oriented and about lunch every day, you know? You have to have some reasons for doing that. There's some prudence that has to go into that. But these are good questions.
What about gifts? Because, I mean, I'll give the people at the office, sometimes I make them stuff and just present it,
Yeah.
just give it to them.
Mhm.
Is that considered a meal? Is that considered a gift?
Well, I understand what you're saying. I think that's a gift. I don't hear you saying that you're feeding them as much as
No.
you're giving them a gift
Yeah, so
Yeah.
it's limited to $25.
per gift.
Okay.
Per person.
Yeah, so if you're giving all of us gifts, you got $125 sitting here you can spend, not 25.
Okay, well, shoot, that'll pay for my nuts and stuff for my stuff that I make.
Yeah,
Okay.
I do a lot of the same thing. I bake for our office, so I understand. Good questions. You guys are, you online folks are being awfully quiet. Do you have any questions that you want to ask? Mike, Stephanie?
Not like,
Yeah, there's none.
nothing in the chat, so I think we're good there.
All right.
Nope, I'm still good. Thank you. I'm
Yeah, good
enjoying it.
deal. Well, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate it. I don't want to keep you guys beyond what you want to be kept, but if you have more questions, I'm good on
I
time.
do, but I would wait till.
Perfectly, no problem. Well, everybody benefits from hearing the questions, Swati, so don't hesitate
No,
to
it's
ask them.
kind of little, it may not,
Specific to your situation?
yes.
Gotcha.
Is it $25 per person per year?
No, forget,
Oh, shoot.
forget.
So
Oh,
if I have a closing and if I just buy a nice something, like a kitchen, something like ice cream scoop or something, right? So that would be one gift, and as long as it's under $25, it's good.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean I can give you $10, $25 gifts.
Oh,
It means for this event, I can give you a $25 gift. But if you're buying an ice cream scoop for mom and a bowl for dad, and
also those are
greater
all
gift
considered as
certificates
per
for
gift.
kids, you know.
So our,
Got it.
our closing gift bag's like $100. I just divide it up into different people.
Right.
Okay.
That's what I would do. Again, it's arguable that that's promotional expense, not a gift anyway. That's a hard argument to win. You're dealing with an IRS auditor. Thank goodness the IRS has been decimated. They have almost no auditors left. If you live to be 200 years old, you might get audited once. I mean, it's that kind of numbers right now. It used to be that about 3% of the firms got audited. Now it's like 0.5% Used to be 20 people, 20 auditors in Louisville. Now there are 5 that are shared between Louisville and Lexington. Your odds of audit are not very strong. These folks I was talking about earlier got audited. had huge losses on businesses. Made no sense to anybody. That's why the IRS looked. So, you know, audit risk is not strong. However, it is a pain in the butt when you do go through it. I mean, I had a client look at me one time, I mean, repeat what he said, it was a little off color, but he said, are they gonna wanna know that next? I mean, he was just continuing the questions they continue to ask, drill down. How do you spend money? How can you get your hair fixed? Blah, 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 blah. They're trying to make sure your lifestyle makes sense in light of what you're reporting on your tax return.
We can, I wish we could deduct our hair and nails and.
Yeah. No, you need to deduct your client's hair and nails when you take them, right?
Yeah, a serious question on that though. Let's say we do, part of my business is, being on, you know, video and on audio
Yeah.
calls. Can I?
You're not gonna like the answer to this.
Okay.
The problem is,
Well, then
things
don't-
that other people have to do as well.
Yeah.
So we represented and still represent some TV anchors.
Right.
Those guys spend $1 zillion on clothes.
Yeah.
And so the problem is, it's the same kind of clothes that I can wear, you can wear, everybody else can wear, right? Maybe for the guys, it's a suit, maybe for the girls, it's a nice coordinated, whatever it is. But at the end of the day, they're not, you know, they don't say wave free news on the front or anything like this.
Well,
It's
what if
just
it
regular
has
clothes.
real
There
estate?
you go. If you get Keller Williams on stuff, or you know, your group on stuff, or those types of things, those are deductible.
That's good.
They are, absolutely. But short answer is grooming and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, suppose Keller Williams said, if you're gonna be an agent here, you will have a weekly haircut.
Right.
And it's part of your contract.
Oh,
We can't do that. You owners, independent business owners.
Yeah, but if that was the case, then now all of a sudden, yes, you have a different situation. So my TV anchor story, those guys are spending $4, $5, $6 grand a year on just stuff to wear on their visual. Yeah. And so the bottom line we ended up with was that we would go through calculations and talk about what was excess and take deductions. I have to admit, none of them ever got audited, so I don't know whether or not it was stood up to audit or not. But we were saying normal people spend this, they're spending this, the difference should be deductible. Two Waves credit, boy, those stations are cheap. But the Waves credit, they came along and actually started giving them a clothing allowance.
Right.
And at
Wow.
that point, that took all that off the table. We didn't have to deal with it anymore.
And dry cleaning, because you have to
Yeah.
deal with dry cleaning.
So you're a priest or a reverend that has specific clothes that you wear in a church setting?
I
like
had that
Rose?
situation, yes.
Yeah, so then all that cleaning, 100% deductible, because that's clergy wear. You know, but realtor wear,
Yeah.
you know, is not particularly real unique.
What about trips and, because I've heard that, like, if I'm going on vacation and I am going to preview homes in a particular area,
Right?
and I'm gonna meet with maybe a realtor, maybe.
It's a good
That
question.
happens to
Keep
be
going.
here.
Mhm.
I'm gonna meet them on a Monday, I'm leaving on a Friday, but my meeting is not until that Monday.
Mhm.
What portion of that trip can I deduct?
Your example's a little convoluted. Let me give you a couple of others that'll answer your question.
Okay.
Suppose I'm going to Disney World for a week,
Mhm.
and at night, for 30 minutes, I drive around Orlando and I look at properties, and I check values and all that kind of stuff. After I get back from the park, first off, you'll be dead tired, you're not gonna wanna do it. But assuming, you know, well, I did real estate activity every day I was there. What was the primary purpose of the trip? I went to Disney and I screamed and I yelled and I waved my arms for, 70 hours during the week or whatever time you're there. That trip, you can't deduct anything except the specific expenses for the business activity. So if you drove 150 miles, during those evenings looking at properties, you can take mileage allowance for that. But the trip down, the trip back, the meals, lodging, no. My favorite example, I get this question a lot, ski seminars for the doctors. Talking about some smart stuff going on here. I call them ski seminars. Needless to say, the sponsors don't. They're held in Vail, and they last a week. And the seminar meets from 9 to 11 in the morning and from 3 to 5 in the afternoon, every day. Got to be there a whole week to get the seminar in.
Right.
Yeah.
And ski from 11 to 3 every day. It's the best hours for skiing. So they structure it specifically because they know this. It's very popular. A lot of doctors go to these. But they basically meet all day long. That's a full week that can be deducted. The lodging, the meals, everything else, can't deduct ski lift tickets. Those are personal.
Well, heck, who cares if
Yeah.
you're deducting everything else?
But you can deduct everything else. So how you structure things matter. The one advantage the IRS has, if they ever sit here and I'm the IRS asking you these questions, I have probably had it 2 years ago. So I know whether or not there was any business benefit that came out of it. Suppose that you go down there and you look at properties and you buy one.
That's different.
It does. It changes things. Suppose you just look at properties everywhere you go because you're a realtor. It's gonna struggle with that. But a trip is either always classified as predominantly business or predominantly personal. If it's predominantly business, the cost of getting there, getting home, lodging, meals, all deductible. If it's predominantly personal,
For you, but not your husband and your kids.
right, absolutely true.
Right.
But if a trip's predominantly personal, only the things you spend specifically on business are deductible while you're there. Went to Florida, stayed a week. I've got a big business client down there, big for me. We took them to dinner. Of course, I deducted the dinner. Did I deduct getting down there and back? No. Or the lodge while we were there for a week, we took them out one night. So I deducted the dinner, but I couldn't deduct anything else. So, does that help? Good. All right.
Right.
Yes,
Okay,
ma'am.
just make it clear because I'm not sure. So anything that you spend for your educational, like in real estate, once you do CEs and PLEs.
All deductible.
All
All deductible. That's my point about direct expenses. There are a lot of things that you only incur because you are a realtor.
Okay,
That continuing education you're doing because you're a realtor. That's the
so that should all be.
you got some education to go when you're young in these professions. So make sure you team up with somebody who answers all these questions for you, because every one you get answered is just that much more that you know. You just keep building on that base. I can bet that Marcia would say that she knows more about real estate today than
Oh,
she
yeah.
probably did 5 years ago. Because you just continually,
Yesterday, because I learned something.
well, that's my point.
Yeah.
You know, any profession you're in, I don't ever try to tell everybody we know everything. Good grief, there's a lot of stuff that we'll learn. I learned something about, what was the investment vehicle yesterday? There's a type of indexed investment now that you can get 6 to 7% on per year, and there's no downside, because even if the market drops, the way that this particular investment is structured, you never participate in the downside. But it does 6 to 7% per year on average, going up. I'm sitting here thinking, why isn't everybody selling these things? And they're sound. It's based on the indexes of the market. You know, but 40 years into this profession, it's the first time I've heard about them. And I checked them out. They're real. You know, it's something that this group's been doing for 10 to 15 years. And some other groups are attesting to the fact that, yeah, they're real. They're just more trouble than we go to. We don't do that. So you learn. That's the point.
Oh, yeah.
We always offer free consultations.
Mhm.
Anybody that comes to a seminar, if you would like to talk about your situation specifically,
Mhm.
take advantage of that. It is no obligation, no cost.
Sure,
It will
I would
not
like
cost
to
you
do
a
that.
penny. We'd love to do that, get to know you better,
Mhm.
see if there's anything we can help you with. And if you become a client, that's great. But we truly will do the education without that expectation, just to see if we can help you in some way. So,
Sure, yeah.
So I'll speak to that in a second. I got your emails, and I appreciate everyone hopping, who's online, was able to get your email as well. I'll be sending everyone out an email, just follow up from this seminar. Like Rick said, we do those consultations, free of charge for anyone that does, join these seminars. So there will be a link to my calendar to get that scheduled. So that'll be here in your inbox when you leave. And yeah, we look forward to discussing anything you beneficial for.
Yeah, because
So-
I have a little different situation. So it would need some time.
sure, no, Swanee, that's what we do. Be glad to talk with you. I may need your help. We're actually interviewing 2 Indian accountants
Really?
this Friday.
Oh.
So, you may have to be our translator. I'm not sure. But
Wow, I would love to do that.
Do you have anybody that speaks Spanish?
we don't currently. We have had in the past,
Mhm.
but it was administrative staff and they moved on to other jobs. And so we have people who have very poor Spanish skills right now. They understand just enough to be dangerous. So.
Mhm.
But yeah, that's becoming a need too. you know, it's interesting, the Hispanic population in this city tends to flock to certain providers. Because there's obviously a lot of word of mouth that goes on among any of those professions. We have a whole bunch of, I'm trying to remember, we've got a number of Russian clients because that population is very tight here as well, and one of our accountants is Russian. But it's just interesting dealing with them. We had a client that was part of the German national population here. We dealt with them for a long time. So it's been really interesting. The number of hotels in subways in this particular community that are owned by Indian nationals is unbelievable. It's like 80% or something crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's huge. But that's what, again, that word of mouth causes Indian nationals to want to pursue those types of businesses a lot.
Right.
And so it's just not unusual. Matter of fact, Patel, I know, is a very common name in India, but we had some Patels that owned
It's
hotels,
not all over the India though, it's just one.
just some
particular
area,
state.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then we had some other Patels that were subway owners. So the stereotypes were right on
One of
target.
them is my husband.
No, I don't think so. These guys are a little older than you are, so I'm thinking your husband's probably
Well,
not
my
that
husband
much
owns
older.
one subway.
Yeah,
Yeah.
cool. That's very neat. Very neat.
Where does he own?
Which one?
It's in the downtown, right across the UFO hospital.
Okay.
Cool. Do you have other questions?
I do, but,
Some you want to ask today, or do you want to get together with us in a separate
I think
session?
that would
Or?
work too, because, yeah, I think that would.
Why don't we do that? That way we can let everybody else move on if that's good with you, Scotty. And just jump on Brett's calendar. Let's get something scheduled as far as talking through, you know, whatever your
Okay,
questions
yeah,
are.
let's do that.
Brett, we might want to even reverse the order of some things there and maybe get her scheduled for some strategy session and go from there.
Yep.
Marcia, what's your best baked recipe?
Mhm.
Floored you with that one, didn't I?
It could be anything, because at this time of the year, my mom and I and my sister, we always baked. So I just start baking stuff and I don't eat none of it, or I might taste it and then I gotta give it all away.
That's
So
good.
that's what I'm doing.
Yeah.
Well, my clients
It would
not
be scary to know how much sugar I go through this time of year.
Oh, yeah, I do too. You got a good recipe?
Oh, I've got a number of recipes I'm kind of fond of. One thing we do is we got a derby pie
You were
knockoff.
spoken for, so.
Yeah, we got a derby pie knockoff that, I'll send one off to you for you to try. It's a derby pie knockoff. It's got a pecan base instead of a walnut base.
Okay, I don't like walnuts, so that would be great.
I'll send it along to you. Everybody that eats this one likes this stuff. So,
But any chance, do you have a good, sweet potato or fish oil recipe?
Now, sweet potato, is it casserole?
Is it pie?
No. I'm gonna tell you no.
Or a
because-
good, well, I got a good crust recipe that I use that is non-fail.
Yeah, I'd love to see that one too.
So-
You and I may become recipe buddies.
Yeah, yeah, but only for sweets. I don't like
Oh,
all.
I know. It's funny, my wife does most of the cooking at home, but it gets done. There's just two of us now, so we don't do as much as we used to, but I do all the baking.
Okay, that's-
Yeah. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
Been a pleasure.
So much on the real estate side as much anymore because I'm on salary.
So
Doing
apply-
well?
Yes, I applied for one LLC and maybe two more.
That's good for you.
Yeah, yeah.
If you, people that make a lot of money on real estate do what you're talking about.
Okay.
They integrate in all the areas. The reason they do that, it becomes very economy proof.
Right.
You know, when one thing's not what the others are, real estate could be a tremendous deal on the other side.
Right.
When it's not selling, you find markets.
Yeah.
And flips, sometimes they're out there all the time too, when things aren't selling well. So I guess it's funny how much it changed before you went to wait in.
I'm working on it. I'm down about 40. You look great though.
Thanks, but it's the same thing.
Yeah.
It's all the time.
I didn't even know it.
Yes, yeah. So I've got a property that I want to buy right now, to buy and flip. Should I wait until the LLC is in place?
It's gonna take you 10 minutes to get that done. You just need a your name.
Okay.
So you want us to put it in place for you?
Yeah.
Yeah, we do it quick.
Okay.
When do you think you might close on it?
I don't have it tagged, so it'd be 2 weeks, 3 weeks.
It's gonna be 2 weeks, no problem at all.
Okay.
You said 2 days. I've been on my head for.
No, it'll be a couple weeks.
I'm pretty
Send me the
prepared.
Okay.
that as
Just
soon
email
as
me
I
and
get
we'll do the rest.
W2
All right.
here, I'm gonna be.
That'll do.
The,
Ready to get
the
it
answer
knocked out.
more about it.
Yeah, we got a couple that we're looking at. It's fascinating, it's gonna be real fascinating when, you know, a whole bunch of people's loans are expiring. So those are all coming due now, and there are people who are literally can't pay that, and so they're putting their homes up for sale or going straight into, lost my train of, going, the bank's taking over the property. Yeah, foreclosing.
Yeah.
And so
Have you,
rental properties particularly, these next 3 months are gonna be hot.
yeah, have you looked at, are you members of either of the investor groups on the side of it?
Yeah.
I speak to the Indians are pretty awesome. The guy structured out, always my last name. He's been the treasurer of the Woodward Group for a long time. Funny story, he's not a very good man. He's one of those history writing types of CPA.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mike Brennan.
Okay.
Mike's actually has been the treasurer for a long time for this. I told him I'd like to come and speak with him.
Yeah.
They won't let me in the door.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but Mike's long.
That's interesting.
I get to talk to the Southern Indiana group up until COVID, a couple times a year.
Yeah.
Just because they're very active over there, and there's some of those guys making.
Yeah.
Just the number of properties that they're flipping. These days wholesale is one of the things.
Oh, yeah.
Just buy it and don't do anything.
3 weeks later, sell again.
Yeah.
I know. It's crazy.
It's really, the several people, like Vogel's one of the folks in his office, go buy it, wait a couple weeks, sell again.
Yeah.
And one of their tricks is they'll buy a house on MLS that has terrible pictures, go in and take off better pictures, and then sell it again.
I had talked to some of the guys in Indiana that are so active, and they literally just said, got a buyer, let's go find a house.
Yeah.
It's like for a wholesale? I mean, these guys not really look for houses themselves.
Well, apparently not. I got 3 buyers that we can't find a house for. They got money, they're ready to buy, there's no house.
You'll find them.
Yeah.
Crazy stuff. Look forward to speaking with you. Obviously, we'll be speaking with you. Sure, of course.
So for all that I.
She, well, she got the education. Such a, and
I didn't have a business just for time.
Right.
And going forward till the end of this year.
and I love to hear that.
Get that over to you, get that over to me.
Right.
And then we'll, yeah, we'll get you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't do it now.
How much time left?
All it will do is cause you to have to file, you know, that $200 maintenance
Yep,
cost.
and,
You'll just end up
you're
incurring
right
that for
now.
2020. If you wait 5 or 6
It is,
weeks,
so that's great.
then you can basically just do it the first week of 2021. Because I don't think the tax benefit will be there for you, Swati.
Another one of our accounts, just
Let's say
we
the
do
next-
so much.
I
We'll
think
do
that's
session on, have that straight
I
session
don't
with you,
Yeah.
go over the project, access, what to do. And on that, basically put a plan together.
So then I can still treat it as individual and not.
Right. It'll cost you that front end money, or Carrie does it, probably not even that. So it costs you whatever it costs you to
Well, that's
form it,
been better.
and then about $200 a year to maintain it. Yeah, which again, for the benefit of having the tool out there in the event that you do sell some things and the numbers do pop up, and you will, you're gonna be, if you actually work this, and I know you guys have other things going on.
It's just like the first year that you.
Oh, sure, it's all. It's that crystal ball problem again, yeah. But the point is, you can't do it after the fact. So what happens when I have these conversations with a lot of young realtors is that they hear everything I'm saying and they just go and they go do stuff. And I'll be talking to them in July or August and they'll say, well, I've already closed out $50,000 worth of commissions this
All I
year.
know is he said.
And it's like, well, let's go ahead and get it put in place for the rest of the year, but we can't do anything about that first 50,000. Right. Yeah, so that's why you put it in place at the beginning of the year, because for $200 a year.
And then you just see that. So now the next question is, can you switch from being finance individual to LLC, thereby do it like this year? would
You
be
can't switch back and
Something
forth
all
like
of our
that.
lives.
Yeah,
So
so
you
it's like,
really can.
it's the benefit.
The reason why it's a trick question is that once you move from that column to this column, that LLC has to stay there for 5 years. But suppose that you have this incredible year, it's really beneficial, and then the next year you're thinking, well, I'm not gonna do that again. You can actually form a new LLC. So there are ways around it. But for that specific LLC, once you make the election to move to that side, you got a 5-year period before you can move back. So for that particular, so we
do an email.
we've done this for so long, that those kind of questions, we just figure out ways to make them work. Maybe we close down
Like,
LLC.
this is here, like everybody already, but in our house, all this stuff,
Okay.
massive.
Yeah.
So you know.
Right.
So I, he's been filing all the presidents, so I have no, not much knowledge about all this.
I understand.
But I know that he, as a business owner, he does have like that.
So,
And he is a
yeah.
strict-
I love that. I love it when things are
So I
structured
wanted-
and ordered.
That's the structure right there.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
How would it affect to the other offices, because my name is on that too?
Well, you're gonna have that issue no matter what. When I say it's gonna affect it,